Welcome to our webinar on holiday pet safety for your senior dog. We are here with Pet Crusader Denise Fleck. I'm your moderator, Jenny Kashnick. I'm president of the Gray Muzzle organization, and we provide grants to animal shelters and rescues nationwide for senior dog programs. Our presenter today, Denise Fleck, is an award-winning author, and she's published numerous books and articles on pet safety. These include the Pet Safety Bible, Pet Safety Crusaders, My Pet, and Guide to Pet Disaster Preparedness. Dog First Aid and CPR are just to name a few. These books are available on Amazon.com or her website at PetSafetyCrusader.com. Okay, Denise, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm delighted to be here, and I thank you and the Gray Muzzle organization for helping me to get the word out on ways we can help our senior dogs live longer, happier, healthier lives with us. I was driving down a dark mountain road visiting family in New York when out of nowhere a large black Rottweiler appeared in front of me. His dark color made him invisible until that last second. I slammed on the brakes, but the worst had happened. I started crying and shaking, but realized I had to help, realized I could help because I knew Pet First Aid and CPR. What could have been an absolute tragedy turned into a success story for a student of mine named Lisa Shapiro, who wrote those words to me just weeks after taking one of my Pet First Aid classes. The point is it's so important for our four-legged family members that we are prepared to help because life happens and we can't keep them in a plastic bubble. So when something does go wrong, and obviously in the case of an older animal it's more likely to happen, we want to be there to give them the help they need before veterinary care is available. Now, first aid is by no means a replacement for that competent veterinary care. Like you see on the slide there, veterinarians are the experts. But even if you're married to one or live with one or cohabitate in any way, it generally is just Murphy's Law that when something happens to the pet, you're generally home alone and after veterinary hours. So it's important that we know what to do so that we can, increase the chances of happily ever afters for our four-legged family members. Now, emergencies aren't always as life-threatening as the Rottweiler I mentioned being hit by a car. Way back many years ago on the eve of Valentine's Day, my own yellow lab woke up and couldn't get up off the floor. When she tried, she literally let out blood-curdling screams that seemed to echo through the canyons around our house. Sunny was 8 at that time, and she basically ruptured 3 discs in her spine. As we found out later, it wasn't even an injury. It was a genetic defect she had been born with. Like all of us, sometimes joints just don't fit quite right, and after years and years of life and them rubbing together, there's a flare-up. Well, that's what happened to our beautiful Sunny, and to make matters worse, at that point in time, our house was literally 110 railroad tie steps up a hill from the car to the house. So having close to a 100-pound dog in pain, yet she was conscious, and would be struggling, it really seemed like a daunting task to carry her down all those steps. Long story short, I developed a really good relationship with my veterinarian, and although he didn't make house calls, he did send a vet tech to our house, and we got Sunny on a stretcher, and after surgery, she bounced back to her fun-loving self. There she is, and she was my whole inspiration for teaching these Pet First Aid classes because I never again wanted to be caught unprepared when my furry child needed me. There was her surgery, and I'm happy to say that afterwards she healed and went on many, many more fun adventures with us, even learned to open our refrigerator. So we went through quite a few child-proof locks in order to keep her safe from herself. But she is the whole reason why I'm talking to all of you today and helping you to help your senior pets as well. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just want you to know that I'm not, flying on the cuff here and making things up as I go along. I have trained with a lot of places, I have talked with a lot of experts, and I've had a lot of hands-on experience. But I must admit, having been dog mom to 11 and cat mom to 1 over the years, that along with my rescue work is where I have gained, my greatest knowledge in learning to help our four-legged family members. So what is pet first aid? And don't worry, we are definitely getting into holiday tips today, but I just want to address a few things so that you're going to be able to jump to the task and notice when something isn't right with your pet during the holiday or any time of year. Pet first aid is the first thing we do at the sign of injury or illness. It's that first bit of treatment. It may not be the end treatment. You may end up at a veterinarian's office, but it's the first thing we do. When we were all younger and fell off a swing, and Mom washed off our skinned up knee, put a bandage and a kiss on it, her first aid was that initial wound cleansing, and then just observing to make sure things healed, that we didn't pick at the scab or it didn't become infected. When we got a bit older and fell off a skateboard or a bicycle or a slide, and we came in with an arm just throbbing in pain, most likely Mom or Dad ripped up a sheet or got a scarf out of the drawer and made some sort of temporary sling for our arm. They may have gone to the freezer and grabbed some ice or even a bag of frozen mixed vegetables to put on it to diminish some of the pain and swelling. But most likely the next step was we were in the car on the way to the doctor or the hospital to have it x-rayed and put in a cast or a splint. So my point here is the same things can happen with our dogs at any age of their lives. When something happens, sometimes we can fix it, watch it, and make sure they get better. But other times we're going to do something to prevent further injury and hopefully diminish some of the pain they're experiencing. But we're going to need quickly that competent professional veterinary help to get them through it. Only 1 out of 10 dogs and cats won't experience an emergency at some point in their lifetime. So that's why you're listening to me here today. And I am including our feline friends because very often our dogs, whether they're young or old, they often have a feline companion in the household. So it's good to know what to do for them as well. But by knowing pet first aid and just doing one little technique before we head to the veterinarian, we increase the chances of that pet's recovery and survival. What I mean by that is if our pet is too hot, and I know in most parts of the country at this time of the year that's not a reality, but you know what? I'm in Los Angeles and we're pushing the high 90s today, and it's it's almost Thanksgiving. So depending on where you are, you may need to watch some of these things year-round. But if a pet's body temperature is too hot and we know how to cool them off quickly, we can prevent brain damage and death. If an animal's losing a lot of blood and we know how to stop that bleeding and prevent infection from getting in before we get to the vet, we can truly save that animal's life. If they've consumed some type of poison and we know how to get it the heck out of their system, again, another life-saving measure. And obviously, in the worst-case scenario, if we know how to do a Heimlich maneuver to prevent choking or do rescue breathing and CPR to be the pump that heart can't be for that moment in time, we can truly save a life. But that's all for a totally different webinar today. But there are a few things I do want to go through with you now in preparation for the chaotic time of year. Accidents can happen 365 days a year and 24/7 during the week, but obviously they do increase with holiday chaos. So the 5 points of today's webinar are going to be to discuss how to check your pet's vitals so that you'll know if something isn't quite right with them and get them the help they need. To start doing a weekly head-to-tail checkup of your pet, because especially when they're getting on up there in years, lumps and bumps and aches and pains seem to appear, and the sooner we catch them and have somebody check them out, the better chances our pet has to living a quality life. Number 3, I'm going to talk to you about your pet's toolkit. Some of the things you should have on hand in case chaos does ensue over the holidays. 4, I want you to absolutely positively know where your closest animal emergency center is, because like I mentioned a moment ago, when life happens, sometimes we aren't, in a group of people or near a vet's office. We need to know where this place is and get there to get, Fido feeling better quickly. And number 5, I like to call it down on all fours for your senior's pet's sake. But what I mean is I just want you to make sure you've got your eyes and ears open and that you keep a safe scene, that you literally get down on all fours in your house and yard and make sure there's nothing that curious paws can get into to cause a holiday disaster. So let's start off learning to check vitals. And you guys probably all know how to do this on yourselves, but you may or may not know how to do it on your canine best friend. So pulse, that rhythmic movement of blood going through the artery. The best place to palpate it on our dogs is the femoral artery. Think of the big femur bone in the thigh and the hind leg. And what you're going to do is just place 2 fingers at the knee on your dog and then roll those fingers to the inner upper thigh, literally the groin, and that's where you should be able to feel the pulse. Never use your thumb, use your middle or index finger to feel for that, but it's an important thing for you to know and know what the baseline number is for your pet. You'll see here on this slide I have a chart depending on size and species, but as far as pulse and breathing or respiration goes, this is the big concept I'd like you to think of. The bigger and older the animal, the slower he breathes and the slower his heart rate. The smaller and younger the animal, the faster those 2 things are. So if you think back to when your senior was a puppy and he had lots of energy and was literally bouncing off the wall, he was breathing faster and his heart rate was faster than he is now as a more mature pet. So it's just an important thing to know what the baseline is for your pet and realize that from year to year as he grows and as he ages, those numbers will slow down. Breathing or respiration, literally that inhaling and exhaling, the best place to check it on our pet is by observing or just placing our hand on the side of the chest, feeling for that rise and fall as the animal intakes air and exhales it. Medium to large dogs breathe somewhere in the 10 to 30 breaths per minute, so find out what is specific for your unique individual pet. And then our smaller dogs will breathe a little bit faster, 20 to 40 breaths per minute. The whole point of this, and when I talk to you about the head-to-tail checkup in a moment, it's that by knowing what is normal for our dog, we can more quickly determine when something isn't quite right or is abnormal and get them the help they need. Temperature. Us humans generally come in around 98.6 on average, but some of us are lower and some of us are higher. If your dog is ever 98.6, he's in a whole heap of a lot of trouble. You see here on average our dogs and cats as well should be 101 degrees Fahrenheit with the range being 100.4 to 102.5. We take their temperature under the tail, meaning it's very nice if we lubricate the tip of a thermometer first, we lift the tail to prevent them from sitting down, and at about a 40 to 45 degree angle we gently insert the thermometer into the rectum, only a ½ inch to an inch at most to get that temperature. No need to go in any deeper, and it's advisable to use a digital thermometer. If you even have one of those old-fashioned mercury glass thermometers, don't use it around your pet. You're just asking for trouble. There are ear thermometers made, but you need to have a pet-specific one to use on your canine best friend, as our dogs and cats have more L-shaped ear canals, so you need the pet-specific device to get an accurate determination of body heat. If you are using an ear thermometer, however, and the temperature is just a little bit below the numbers you're seeing here, your dog is okay if it's like 99.9. Because if you're using something in the ear, think about it. That's the part of the body near the brain. It should never be the hottest part of the body. You're going to get a little bit warmer reading, when you go internally under the tail. However, if it's, anywhere near close to our 98.6, the pet is desperately in need of help. But I mean, if it's just a little below that 100.4 range, he's probably still okay if all other systems look like they are go. The next vital I want to talk about is probably less familiar to you than the first three we've talked about, but it's something I would imagine you've all checked on yourself since you were a child. It's called capillary refill time, or CRT in medical terms. It's a measure of circulation, how well the blood and oxygen are circulating around the body. If for some reason your pet's heart has slowed down, or he's losing blood, or he's in some sort of cardiac arrest or problem, all of the tissues of the body are not going to be getting the blood and oxygen they need, and your pet can go into shock, which is a life-threatening condition. So we just want to check capillary refill time. It's like I said, a lay person's way of checking circulation. And the way I'm sure you've checked it on yourself forever was just by taking a finger and literally pressing on the top of your fingernail until your finger turned white. And then when you release that pressure, that pink color comes back pretty quickly. The point of this is capillaries are the smallest vessels in our body that carry blood and oxygen. And for a moment when you're applying that pressure, you're diminishing the blood flow to the tip of your finger. If you have a good, healthy circulatory system, when you release that pressure, the blood starts flowing and that pink color comes back very quickly. The capillaries are in our extremities, in our fingers and our toes, and the mucous membranes, our nose and our gums. They're kind of what I call the place of first resistance. If you're ever in a cold room, say a movie theater, or to some of you in different parts of the country, maybe just outside your door right now, it's generally our noses, our toes, our fingers that get cold first, because those are the areas at the extremes of our body that when we get cold and our body tries to self-regulate, it zaps the blood and oxygen from those extremes back to our center cavity, chest cavity, to make sure all of our major organs are getting what they need. In other words, if I was to lose a fingertip to frostbite, I'd be okay. But if my liver froze up, I'm in a lot of trouble. So it's just the body's way of self-regulating. So if you're getting a good pink color at your fingertips, we kind of can extrapolate from that you've got a good blood flow going all over your body. So that's what we're trying to check with our dogs. But pressing on their nail beds doesn't do a whole lot of good. So what we actually need to do is lift their upper lip from the side of their mouth. Don't ever pull up at the front of their teeth. Somehow that's uncomfortable for them. But lift the lip at the side of their mouth, and with the index finger, the fleshy part of your finger, press on their gum until it turns white or lighten it. When you release that pressure, you want to see that good bubblegum pink color come back within 1 to 2 seconds. If not, you're going to need to treat the pet for shock, which means we're going to try to increase circulation, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and then get the pet to emergency care. This picture shows you what good, pink, healthy gums should look like. And that actually, I think, is a picture of a young dog, because look at how pearly white those teeth are, too. But right above that, you see my youngest son, Haiku, who is actually 11 now and a senior himself. But if you'll notice, dark gums and lips. There's no pink to judge this by. So if you do happen to have a pet with dark gums, that doesn't mean they're any less healthy, but it makes it a little more difficult to determine capillary refill time. So what I like to have you do in that case is just go to the eyelid and pull the lower lid down and kind of just turn it out ever so gently. If you see good pink in there, well, then your pet is good to go. But if it's ever pale or gray or blue, you don't need to pinch at it, but just looking at the color, you do need to get him to veterinary care. This other doggy you see over on the right has yellow, both in the gums and in the whites of the eyes and even in the ear flap. Yellow either means the pet has liver toxicity, his liver is going bad, or he has swallowed zinc, Z-I-N-C, zinc. Where would a pet get into zinc? Well, in the winter, most of us aren't using suntan lotions, but that is one place that zinc is. But if there are babies in the house, diaper rash ointment has zinc. Pennies have zinc. Many nuts and bolts have zinc. Why would our dogs swallow nuts and bolts and pennies? I don't know, but they do. So this is a life-threatening condition, and I just want you to realize that gum color is ever so important. So always notice your pet's gums. If they're pale, if they're bright red, meaning the pet is, overly hot, suffering from heat stroke, get your pet to the vet. If they're gray or blue, the pet could be anemic or he could be suffering a lack of oxygen. Get him to the vet. The only thing we'd want to see are the pictures on the left of my screen here, that good pink, bubblegum pink color, or that, rich dark color, whatever the normal pigmentation is of your pet. And another vital I want to discuss is hydration, or the lack thereof, dehydration. Our pets, like us in the planet Earth, are about 3/4 water, and they need that good, healthy water supply at all times. So even though we're getting into the cooler months now, you still need to keep your senior pets well hydrated. If they're tired, if they're constipated, if they have an increased heart rate or their eyes look sunken, they could be suffering from dehydration. And this can also happen during the holidays because if they get into some food or we divert their diet and they have an upset stomach, that vomiting and diarrhea dehydrates a pet and he may be in trouble. So you may have heard of the Tuger test, where you just grab or pinch gently some skin at the nape of the neck, and when you release it, if it falls back in place, we feel the pet is well hydrated. Well, yes, that is true, but our senior dogs actually lose a little elasticity in their skin just like us senior humans do, and it may stay in that peak a little bit longer and confuse us. If you're ever seeing it, though, I didn't have a picture of a dog, but you see like our little rodent friend here, how the skin is really sticking together. That is severe dehydration. But what I prefer to do, rather than even pinching at the skin, is just once again going to the mouth carefully and feeling the gums with my finger. If they're sloppy wet, he's good to go. But if they're dry or even sticky, encourage him to drink. Squirt his mouth with a fresh spray bottle of water. Use a needleless syringe or eyedropper to get fluids in him. If it's time for his next meal, don't just be feeding the dry kibble. Make sure you mix in some canned food or some water in with the food, or some non-sodium chicken or beef broth, but get fluids into those pets. It's so important. Hydration is one of those things a lot of us just don't pay enough attention to, and it really is life-threatening because every system of our bodies need that life-giving water. And then the last of the vitals I'm going to talk about is weight. And I'm sure everybody's just like rolling their eyes at me talking about weight as the holidays come. But it's important for our pets, too, to stay at a good, healthy weight. Actually, keeping them at a healthy weight in most cases on average allows a dog to live 2 years longer than he would if he's overweight. So make sure you can feel the ribs but not see them, like in the center pictures here, and that the tummy is tucked up in front of the hindquarters, that the chest is actually lower. As they get to be seniors, I know they lose some muscle tone and it may straighten out a little bit like you see in picture number 4, but make sure that's just a loss of muscle tone and not, an addition of girth to the body. So the point is to really get to know your pet, because the more you're acquainted with what his body looks and feels like and his habits of eating and drinking and going to the bathroom, the more quickly you can determine when something isn't right and get him to professional medical care. So I want you every week, and this again is a whole webinar in itself, but I want you to, especially with your senior, once a week, really give them the once-over from head to tail. And you don't have to be even professionally trained in this for starters, but just really look them over. Get to know, every inch of their body so that you can catch a lump when it's the size of a pencil eraser rather than when it's the size of a golf ball and is already starting to grow and take, effect in their bodies. Look in their eyes, feel down their shoulders and their legs. Make sure their paws aren't cracked. Those of you in cold country, don't let your pets be out in the cold, especially those seniors. It's so hard on their bodies, and they can get frostbite, and they don't tell us when things are getting numb, so it really can end up being an emergency medical situation. But just look your pet over from head to tail once a week and literally going all the way down the tail. The tail has nerve endings and blood supply. It can get a wound, it can get a cyst or, some kind of tumor growing there too. If your pets are getting arthritic, they may not be able to clean their private areas as well. So it's important that you get a warm washcloth out every night and can, really help keep that senior pet his very best. Just like a senior human, there is a sense of them losing their dignity when they can't take care of things the way they want to. And we love these guys to pieces, so we just want them to feel their best and have the greatest quality of life through all the years of their life. So do get to know your pet from head to tail and find something when it's small and get it fixed, hopefully before it becomes a nightmare. You're going to use all of your senses except for taste and literally start at the head, look in the ears, feel down the snout or the muzzle. If they grimace or pull away at any point that you touch them, something could be sore. Now, if you've never touched your pet over from head to tail before, you may have to take this in stages, but it's so important because if your pet won't let you touch them somewhere, you're never going to know if something, isn't feeling its best. So make sure you get them comfortable with this, that you do it slowly and don't alienate them, but that you really can touch every part of their body. And hopefully it becomes a great bonding experience for the two of you because it's going to feel great. It's going to kind of feel like an all-over doggy massage without you being trained, and it's prime time for you to give your pet great attention. Then also just tune in even during the hectic holiday season and notice that your pet's eating okay, that he's not eating more or less, and that that water bowl is going down during the day and that you're keeping it filled. If there's any sort of change in the eating and drinking habits, you also need to key into, are they asking to go out more often, or are they not going at all? Because if we have a dog who has increased thirst but he's not going outside, we have a kidney problem. So it's just so important that you be the eyes and ears for those who cannot speak for themselves and really get to know your pet so that you can determine when something isn't quite right. If he's moaning as he tries to get up off from the floor, or is limping, or is labored breathing as he comes back in from a gentle walk. All of these are telltale signs that something isn't quite right. So let's do our best to keep our eyes open and help our seniors live even longer lives and make those senior years golden. It's important for us to have a pet first aid kit. Just like a plumber or a carpenter that has the right tool for the job, we need to have the right tool to help our pets. So it's important you have a pet-specific kit on hand and know how to use all of the items in that kit. There could be various things you might need to use, from hydrogen peroxide to induce vomiting, to Benadryl if the pet has an allergy or a bee sting, to that syringe or needleless eyedropper I was mentioning before to help hydrate your pet. And I want you, and I encourage you this week, if you don't already know the location of your nearest animal emergency center. Hopefully you have your veterinary clinic on speed dial, not that you have to go there that often, but you know where this location is. But I'm talking about the place that is open when your vet is not, because that's when emergencies happen. So I encourage you this week to drive there. Don't need to bring coffee and donuts and become best friends with the place, although I bet some of you already know them intimately. But the point is to actually drive there, make a brain to steering wheel connection and know where this place is. Because if you suddenly have a dog who isn't breathing in your back seat, you don't want to be worrying, is it a right turn or a left turn? Which side of the street are they on? You want to be able to go on autopilot and get your pet the help he so desperately needs. It was a picture-perfect holiday season. The leaves were turning red and golden with maybe a few green ones still hanging on branches above. The men were outside playing football, and yes, of course, there were some ladies joining in as well, while others were in the kitchen preparing the holiday meal, until all of a sudden Brutus staggered into the room in front of the fireplace and collapsed. Fortunately, one savvy pet mom had her wits about her and realized Brutus was choking on a chunk of his kibble. She reached around him and gave him a great big bear hug, which I refer to as the doggy Heimlich-like maneuver, and that piece of kibble went sailing across the floor, and the holiday was saved. My point is, things happen, and you need to be prepared, and you need to be able to react calmly when something isn't right with our pets, because they are so perceptive to our emotions. We need to stay calm and just do our best to help them get through. So let me just briefly tell you, because there are all kinds of things with a holiday meal that our pets could get into. There are going to be toys around the house as we get into holidays. If we have guests come over, they'll have things in their suitcases that if they didn't keep them zipped, our pets could get into. So anytime you notice that a pet is choking, first off, give them a moment to perform that cough on their own. I don't think they really know what gravity is, but they're using a force of gravity by lowering their head below their stomach and trying to propel the object out with a cough. Very often they are successful to do this, but if it's stuck, if they're pawing at their mouth, if they're really in distress, and if it's an animal that will safely let you do so, take a look inside their mouth. Don't ever reach in without looking. If you do, you can push that ball farther down the esophagus. If you grab something without seeing how it's positioned, you can just pull on that bone or that stick or that toothpick and damage laryngeal tissue. So it's imperative you look first. If you look how I'm holding my son here, Haiku, what I've done is I've taken my hand over the top of his snout, and with my thumb and index finger, I've actually wrapped that lip around his canine teeth. That way, if he decides to slam his mouth closed, he's going to bite his own lip rather than me. And then with my other hand, with my right hand, I've got my thumb holding down his tongue so that I can take a good look inside. I do realize very often when an animal is in distress, the last thing he's going to do is just let his mom or dad calmly look into his mouth. But if you have this opportunity to do so and might be able to reach the object, great. If you are able to reach the object and you get it out, I just encourage you afterwards to take a good look at the mouth, because if it was a bone or a stick, it might have done some damage that, even though you've alleviated the choking issue, is going to require some wound or veterinary care. So just do look it over. If, however, you can't get the object out, you're going to do something very similar to the Heimlich maneuver we do for humans. That's why I refer to it as Heimlich-like. And if it's a large dog, you're going to make a fist and literally reach around his waist, giving him a bear hug, putting that fist in the soft part of the belly behind the last rib. And then the key is, as you bend over, keeping him on the ground but his head lower if possible, make sure your chest, your abdomen, whatever part of your body hangs lower, is right up against his back. Don't leave an airspace between you and the dog, because you want to be pulling him up against your chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. And if it doesn't work after 5, come back and do another 5. But this is a most effective technique for helping alleviate choking. If it's a smaller animal and your fist would end up, covering the whole lower abdomen of the pet, instead just place 2 or 3 fingers, the soft part, the ball of the finger, in that same area behind the last rib, and then just brace the animal with his back with your other hand and pull up against your hand, kind of in a fashion like this. Most of the time we are very successful with this technique. But, just be gentle, especially when we have seniors. We don't want to cause any bruising, but if we have a blocked airway, that's a life-threatening situation. So we need to make sure we can open that airway and get the pet breathing. If for some reason you can't get the object out, you need to learn how to do rescue breathing, which you would do all the way to the vet's office, because even though something's blocking the airway, when we often forcefully breathe into the pet's nostrils, we can at least keep that air and oxygen flowing until we can get to veterinary help. But like with most things in first aid, the best first aid is preventing the incident from happening in the first place. So we're going to be talking about some of those things in just a moment. So for our holiday pet safety tips, with seniors in particular, I want to make sure that they still don't, that they still get plenty of quality time with you. You're going to be busy, you've got a lot to do, you've got a lot of people to tend to, but don't have your senior pet looking like the one here in the photo, sad, like he's been left out of the loop. Make sure you have that good quality time every day with him. If company's coming or you have chores to do, make sure you get that walk or that play time, dealt with first, and be in the moment during that time. Pick a time when you're really present with your pet, and then you'll probably tire him out. He'll go take his nap, and you can get other stuff done. With any pet, but particularly with our seniors, stick to a routine. Again, I know we're all busy, but sometimes we end up making ourselves busy because we don't plan ahead. Plan out your day, but stick to the routine. If he normally has a walk, at 7 a.m., don't wait until 8:30. It's harder for him to hold it as he's a senior. And then when an accident happens, you're going to be distressed and you're going to be upset with him, and it wasn't his fault. Stick to his regular diet. I know everybody's going to get some kind of tasty yummy during the holidays, but let's stick to their regular food so we don't upset their stomachs, and to their regular meal time. It's just so very important that we keep up with that schedule. And by keeping them on schedule, we keep ourselves on schedule, and we will function better too. In company. Especially as our pets get older, they may not be used to as much commotion. Maybe we've gotten older along with the pets and our lifestyle's more laid back, except that time of year when, the family comes to visit. So if your pet isn't used to kids around the house, make sure you give any visiting children and their parents just a few rules to abide by. To never bother your doggy when he's sleeping or eating. And this can go if they're bringing other pets around too. It's so important that you have a place of refuge for your senior pet to go to get away from the quiet. But do give people, of all ages some rules about not bothering the pet. If you have kids coming over and they have toys, you're going to have to be observant. Make sure none of those kids' toys look like your dog's toys, because the dog might confuse those toys with his own, and there might be a little incident going on. That's one thing that often happens. Often seniors too, especially if their eyesight or their hearing isn't great, they don't hear people approaching right away, and people think they are getting what's called a late onset aggression, when really you've just startled the pet. So just make sure he has quiet time, but give people some rules about approaching your animal. That's not being rude in any way. You can say it diplomatically, and after all, your dog is your family member that lives there 365 days a year. So I know we all have to adjust when company comes, but if anybody has to adjust, it shouldn't be our senior dog. Remind guests to close doors and to latch gates so that your pet doesn't slip out. In their rooms, they may have brought all kinds of things in their suitcases, or maybe what's in them isn't so interesting, as are all the scents that are on the suitcase from, having flown from Des Moines to Los Angeles to Miami, and all the people that have touched it in between. But there can be medications, over-the-counter or prescription, and sugarless gums can be fatal to our pets if they contain xylitol. So just have company, either zip their suitcases or close their guest room doors when they're not in there, so that your dog doesn't go investigating, and curiosity doesn't make him nuts or dangerous, I should say. And noise, well, I pretty much mentioned that already with the kids and other pets that may be coming into the home and the additional adults. But just make sure that, you do have a quiet, free zone for your senior to hang out. Now, Thanksgiving is first on the agenda here. So how safe is our Thanksgiving table for our pets? Turkey. White meat turkey can be a great protein for both man and beast, but once we prepared it for the feast, it's often slathered with oils, butters, and all kinds of seasonings. Most dogs can safely digest uncooked animal fat in reasonable quantities, but once cooked, fat becomes grease, and it's difficult for our pets to metabolize. A little may cause a digestive upset, while in some pets it can lead to pancreatitis, an inflammation of that organ that produces insulin and aids in digestion, and it can be life-threatening. So remind everybody when feeding turkey to your pets, let you do it. Don't let, Grandma and Uncle John and Aunt Charlotte and Uncle Bob and everybody around the table feed off their plate to the pet, because you're going to have a sick dog. Most of the time when they do feed off their plates, they're going to feed the fatty and grisly pieces they don't want, and that's exactly what I'm saying isn't good for your dog, because once cooked, the skin and the fat literally becomes grease and can be problematic. So, just get down to a little bit of the white meat turkey, and especially if you have it boiled or broiled without the additional oils and salts, that can be great. I know your dog's going to salivate over the gravy, but it's again full of lots of fatty things and might upset his digestion. If anything, depending on the size of the dog, take a teaspoon or a tablespoon, dilute it in water, and garnish that over his kibble. Dogs have an amazing sense of smell. They can actually smell a spoonful of sugar in an Olympic-sized swimming pool full of water. So they can smell a teaspoon of gravy in their food. So just give them a little to let them know they've been part of the festivity, but don't make them sick. And do not, I repeat, do not give them any cooked turkey bones. Make sure they can't get into that, carcass afterwards, that it's taken out to a garbage can with a lid on, because cooked bones can splinter, and if ingested, they can puncture the intestines or anything else they come in contact with. Never, never, never. So here again is just a reminder that the white meat turkey is okay if it's not slathered in oils and butters and gravies, and absolutely no cooked bones. How about cranberry sauce and stuffing? It sounds pretty harmless, huh? Cranberries are good for the urinary tract, but the problem is all the sugar we put in it. The stuffing can be problematic if there are raisins and grapes in it. They can cause kidney failure. We still haven't figured out the toxin that causes it. It seems to be mostly in the skins, but it can be a problem. Nuts, as a rule, are much harder for our pets to digest, and certain nuts, such as macadamias, actually contain toxins. If your dachshund eats a couple of macadamia nuts, tomorrow morning she may not be able to walk. Besides stomach upsets, they can cause temporary paralysis. And again, it's the butter, the onion, the oils, all of those things we put into the stuffing. So, stuffing is probably a no-no unless it's just the tiniest of taste. Cranberries, if you cook up some stewed ones that are sugar-free, positively, they can be great for your pet, but just watch that sugar. Bread dough. There's nothing like bread baking in the oven, but as it's rising on the counter with that yeast, if our pets go counter surfing and they consume that raw dough, it will continue to ferment in the stomach and can actually cause alcohol poisoning as well as blockages. So please keep it in a place where paws and claws will stay off rising bread dough. Sweet potatoes or yams. Now those are yum yum, and I bet these bright orange wonder foods that are rich in vitamins A, C, B6. I know they have manganese and iron. They can be a great source of fiber, cancer prevention, the whole bit. You may feed them to your pets very often. They are A-OK in small amounts, once again, if they're not coated in the marshmallows, the walnuts, and the tons and tons of brown sugar we may use. So maybe slice up a raw potato, sweet potato, spray it lightly with a little canola or coconut oil, and bake it slowly in the oven to make some pet-safe, healthy, sweet treats. These might even be a great treat for you to have at the front door when company comes, so that they can make friends with your senior dog right away, and not be giving them junky treats. Okay, alcohol. I don't think I really even need to say too much, but there is just no safe amount for our pets. A small pet licking out of a wine glass or consuming a small puddle of booze can be serious. So just, keep it out of paw's reach. Here, I was alluding to this already, to leave a small bowl of treats that have been sanctioned by you for guests. to feed Fluffy and Fido so that they don't feed them from their own plates. Maybe when it's mealtime, that's a great time for your senior dog to have his Kong-like toy that's filled with you know, all kinds of sweet potato and chopped apple and maybe a little turkey in there, and that'll take him time, keep him busy, keep him away from the table, so that he'll be out of, you know, people's temptation to feed. It seems once Thanksgiving comes, we get right into Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. All the other holidays are just around the corner. So many things are similar, and, you know, we often feed many of the same things. One thing I didn't mention in the previous list of foods that I'd like to say for the holidays is hors d'oeuvres. People sometimes make all kinds of fancy things to impress, but you know, even if it's just a bologna with a toothpick in it, if the guests don't take that toothpick and deposit it in a safe place, your dog's going to smell the bologna on it, and I don't need to draw you a picture of what a toothpick looks like inside a pet. So just, you know, think about those little accoutrements that you may be using for human company, and think about if they're going to be safe if they end up on the floor around your pet. So as far as getting away from food for a minute, but talking about holidays and the decorations, think twice about where you place the candle display or the holiday tree. If your senior dog loves to watch the mailman come every day from that picture window, that's probably not the best location for those items. He's still going to go there and bark and put his paws up on the windowsill, but now he's going to knock over the candles or the tree or become entangled in it. So do think about, you know, location, location, location as far as where you put various items. It's often a good idea to put a tree up and just leave it undecorated for a day or two to allow your pets to acclimate to it. If they get near it without them seeing you, but from around the corner, you can give a little squirt of a water bottle to kind of discourage them from getting to it. If it's a live tree with water, you want to make sure that water source is covered, because the pine sap and all that leaches into that water can become toxic for your pet. You do not want them to drink out of it, so you need to cover it with a foil or a saran wrap, or like a Tupperware lid with an X cut in it, you know, for the tree trunk. Maybe you can make it more festive and get some small white picket fencing to put around the tree so that the pet can't get near the base. But just keep them away from that, and think about your decorations. I know it's cute to hang dog bones and biscuits on the tree, but it's not wise, because they're going to be tempted by them. And don't take the kind of biscuits and then, you know, shellac them with varnish. It's still going to have a scent to the pet, and now your pet's going to eat, you know, a biscuit that has a chemical on it and possibly consume the hook that it was hanging from as well. Another thing that pets get into trouble with are some of these homemade dough ornaments. They're often made out of salt and flour and water, and people make them and they can be lovely. But if they're hung within paw's reach, they still smell like food, and the amount of salt that goes into those ornaments can really be problematic for our senior pets. So be very careful about your choice of decorations. Make sure that any electric wires for lights are taped down or hidden. And I know I just said no food on the tree, but that also means under the tree. If your neighbor comes over and brings you a gift and somehow you suspect by the weight of it that it's a fruit cake or some other edible item, you know, just kindly ask them if it's food so that you don't place it under your tree, that it goes on a countertop instead, so that you aren't surprised to a pet that has unwrapped something for himself. Candles can be festive, but if you do have any felines that are up on high places, they can knock them over with their tails. But dogs can knock over candles too, so you might want to investigate some of those battery-operated candles that give the glow, but none of the smoke or the fire danger. Tinsel and ribbon can be a real problem, and those are generally more problematic with our cats than our dogs, but dogs rip open presents and consume whatever is on them. So remember, when you have a pet, even if he's a senior pet, you basically have a furry toddler for life, and you have to supervise, supervise, supervise. I think I've talked to you quite a bit about guests, but if they're coming back for the December celebrations, remind them once again about making sure doors and gates and windows are closed so that you don't lose your precious pet while humans are visiting, that you remind them not to bother the dog while he's eating or sleeping, and not to sneak up on him, to let them know you're coming, to always talk or even stomp your feet if you happen to have a pet that's hard of hearing, so that he'll at least feel the vibration and won't be startled by somebody suddenly in his face. And baby, it can be cold outside. Too cold for our canine best friends. All dogs, deserve, especially in their senior years, a draft-free location and a bed. Maybe it's blanket, maybe it's, the egg crate foam, maybe it's something even more super duper than you sleep on. But make sure they have something comfortable for their older bones and their calluses, but not too soft and squishy that makes it difficult for them to get up and out of when their joints and bones aren't quite their best. If you happen to know of any dogs that are sleeping outside, obviously do your best to encourage their owners to find a warm place for them for the winter. I do realize in some kennels and situations animals do live outside, but they need a dog house and they need at least straw and some warm things in there to keep them temperate. They can freeze just like we can, and I mean there are horrible pictures out there of pets literally frozen to the sidewalk. Frostbite is a real thing with our pets because they don't tell us when their paws are starting to get numb, and by the time we generally notice, the skin is dark and hard and needs to be surgically removed. So limit their time outdoors, check their paws, wash those snow melting salts off their paws so they don't lick those and ingest that, which could be poisonous. And just, wipe their paws in general to make sure there's no snow or ice between the toes when they come in. If you can get them to wear dog shoes, practice them wearing them in the house for a few minutes at a time so that you can take them out and protect their paws during the colder times of the year. And most breeds absolutely do benefit from a sweater in cold weather to keep in the body heat. If you have Akitas like I do, they can probably, or Huskies, they can probably go with you for a walk in just about any locale without a sweater. But some of the pets without that dense undercoat really can benefit from it. As far as your New Year's resolutions go, yep, I'm trying to cover the whole gamut of holidays right now. Get prepared. Pet first aid and CPR can really save a life. So treat yourself for your pet's sake by getting into a class and making sure you have the right tools for the job. Shameless plug, but here at PetSafetyCrusader.com, we do have pet first aid kits to help you through. But of all the things I've shared with you today, the most important pet care tip of all is spending quality time with your pet. They love us unconditionally, and we need to show them that unconditional love as well. Be like our dogs. Be in the moment and really cherish those special memories you're going to be making together. If I can be of any service to you, I have books available on senior pets, especially that bottom row. It's all about helping our seniors because that is where my soft spot lies. And coming next year in 2017, I hope you will look for the Pet Safety Crusaders My Pet and Me Guide to Pet Disaster Preparedness, as well as the Pet Safety Bible. Just a few other little products. And I just want to wish everybody tuning in today a happy holidays. Thank you for wanting to learn to help your pets, and thank you so very much to the Gray Muzzle organization for allowing me to share this information with you. I have paws and fingers crossed that the holidays will be happy for you and all of your family members.
All right, thank you, Denise, for this valuable information, and thank you all for taking an interest in this really important topic. For more information and resources on the subject, again, you could go to Denise's website at PetSafetyCrusader.com. For more information on senior dogs or the Gray Muzzle organization, just go to graymuzzle.org. So from Denise and all of us at the Gray Muzzle organization, we wish you a happy and safe holiday to you and, of course, all of your pets. So thank you again, everyone.